Hey, do you know this old song and adapt to that good oldie song they used to play on the radio before the Fukushima core meltdowns occurred? Why don't you try your best and go for it?
I get gamma shine on a cloudy day, not the kind that fades or floats away. It creeps through wells and never leaves. It's the sound of silence when the core's not pleased. Talking about mox melt, mox melt, mox melt, mox melt. Talking about mox melt. Fields stay empty, walls stay sealed, but the count still climbs past what's revealed. Rain comes easy, but not the air, and gamma shine settles like it's always been there. Talking about mox melt, mox melt, mox melt, mox melt. Talking about mox melt. They said it's strong.
Hello, everybody.
They said it's sound. They said containment never backs down.
I'm gonna be your
but
host.
It's still out there, clear as day, running quiet through the rules they made. Talking about mox melt, mox melt, mox melt, mox melt. Talking
let that
about
finish.
mox melt. No alarms now, no new plan, just gamma shine drifting across the land. It ain't the wind, it ain't the rain, it's the melted mixed oxide plutonium concentrate. Talking about mox melt, mox melt, mox melt, mox melt. Talking about mox melt.
Awesome, eh? My goodness. There's a link to that song in the description. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see Brian Colbert pleaded guilty for killing 4 students. Bet you the nuclear industry's pissed he didn't hire him on. He doesn't have to explain why or what he done or why he done it. Remember the BTK killer? He had to give a full confession of each victim. You think that the loved ones deserve at least that much, right? So Fukushima really happened. At the top of the buildings were decades of reactor cores and the fuel pools. And the radioactive fallout model right here is Neptunium-239. It decays to plutonium-239, which is plutonium's named after the devil, by the way. In 2.5 days, that starts its first decay to plutonium. This was a that model is based on 20 days of radioactive fallout. It's crazy, right? The whole planet's covered. This model in the ocean is based on 6 years from a German institute of cesium-137. So the whole ocean was covered at the same time. All the fresh water, all the salt water, everything was covered in 20 to 30 days. That's the consensus worldwide. And you can call in at the show 709-589-4406. All lines are currently open. We got a big show. We got a news cycle for everybody tonight. So you had radioactive fallout cover the whole planet. You had confirmation, the distribution from independent institutions, both of them, of the ocean being completely contaminated, the Pacific in particular. But of course the airborne radiation got all the water, fresh and salt. Now we find out all the whales are emaciated. These are the migratory whales in particular. We're talking about the grey whales, but it's all species, as we've covered many times. Thousands of grey whales are migrating north in such poor shape. Now, they were emaciated when they were heading south last year. Now they're still emaciated, but much more severe now. You can count their rib cages from the shorelines. And there's 14,000 died since 2019, which leaves 13,000. 52%, I think it was, died. And they began their 12,000-mile migration last year. And the whales they're seeing now are extremely emaciated. But that's the entire migratory. The food chain is broken. You can bulging ribs with shoulder braids and vertebrae visible even from the shorelines because the radioactive fallout had broken the food chain. Now, I kind of done a little presentation on that on my last show on Thursday. And the former Miss America is out there promoting the death machine. Why not? She got a job with the nuclear industry, so you got 900 earthquakes in southern Japan, but this is moving up the coast on tectonic plates. So from what I'm assuming so far, it's hard to get a straight answer from the nuclear industry, is that this is the tectonic plates is very active. 600 people died after the Noto Peninsula quake. That fault line was 3,500 years old and it ruptured on New Year's Day, January the 1st, 2024. And that done some serious damage. It raised the coastline for 100 miles up 13, 14 feet in the air. It dried out 6 harbors, fishing harbors. So it's not like a little band that rose up. We're talking about like a mile of the coastline in the ocean side per se. Not necessarily true, right? It was land too, but think of the ocean rising up 13 feet for a mile offshore. It's crazy stuff, right? And you had a tsunami, the 1,500 aftershocks, around 1,500 landslides. It tore open the Noto Peninsula in Ishikawa Prefecture. Liquefaction in the Niigata Prefecture for 6,600 homes. This was the tsunami. This was a picture showed up I hadn't seen before. And look at the elevation. You're not like, because they're on an elevation, they're in a helicopter, I guess, or something, where whoever took this picture. And these people are up on a higher altitude. But you can see how the tsunami swept up. In some places over 130 feet. There was a report from the Shanghai Daily today of a 6.0 magnitude earthquake off the Japan's Fukushima Prefecture. Of course, these reports are always going to be very vague. They won't, like normally, anybody else on the planet will give you, there's a community and it's off that community, they'll tell you that community. Then they'll tell you how far offshore it was and how deep it was. Generally, Japan will give you latitude and longitude. You can go to hell with you, so to speak, right? On Thursday, which is today, because Japan's 12 hours ahead, right? At a depth of 40 kilometers, measuring a 4 on the Shindu scale, the Japanese seismic intensity scale, which only goes to 7. So a 40-kilometer depth is very shallow. Now, that's under the ocean, so you don't expect... so I'm not sure what the reference is for the shaking, whether it's on land or... Because it wouldn't matter if it was on land, if it happened offshore. At a depth of 40 kilometers, they felt shaking in Tokyo, 200 kilometers, 240 kilometers away. Geothermal energy global breakthrough. This is Carney Endowment for the International Peace. Is it right there? Yeah, July the 10th, 2025, 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. Anything small modular reactors can do, geothermal can do much better. Thanks to drilling advancements from the American fracking revolution, the world's geothermal power potential had gone from inconsequential fraction of demand to second only to solar power and renewable energy potential. Well, geothermal is your best one, right? It's constant energy. It's easy, the technology we got to get down to 1,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, which is hotter than gas, oil, coal, nuclear. So anything they can do, geothermal could do it much quicker, much longer, much better, with no adverse health effects to the millions of people. One of the things, are you horrified, this is the poll tonight, are you horrified 1,000 nuclear fuel pools circled by farms, and that they're poisoning millions of people every single day in supermarkets, not counting the radioactive fallout? So the fuel pools, you put the reactor cores in there, but they're still splitting atoms for millions of years. And so there's no containment. And so the whole world seems to be missing this facet. The industry was very good at hiding it. And we had done a presentation on plants, and so I dug up all the pictures a long time ago, a decade ago probably, close to a decade ago. And to our horror, every nuclear power plant we looked at was surrounded by farms. And if you looked from a satellite, typically it'd be as far as you can see. Thanks to drilling advancement, second only, we already done that one. France and Switzerland shut down nuclear power plants amid a scorching heat wave. France and Switzerland shut down a nuclear power plant amid a scorching heat wave. So this is a big flaw. Most of the power plants in France and Switzerland are on rivers that were dependent upon glaciers that don't exist anymore. And so every year you see the rivers are so warm they can't even use it to cool the reactors. And so, but they use it anyway. Now the water going back in, you're talking about 1 million gallons a minute for each reactor core going back into the rivers. Means you're going to kill that habitat, right? And not only that, you're 70% of France's water gets used for nuclear reactors. Hi, everybody. To cool down nuclear power plants pumps water from local rivers, which is absurd because that's the same rivers where they're getting their fresh water for the drinking water, or the sea, which they then release back into the water's bodies at a higher temperature. Well, you know, they boil 1 million gallons a minute, and that water is boiling. And the idea is to boil that water, or to boil water to power electricity. And so that's what they call cooling water. They need 1 million gallons a minute to keep the water they're using to produce power for 1 million homes cool. It's a very complicated system. Geothermal is a much better solution. However, this process can threaten local biodiversity if water is released. So nuclear is just a curse, no matter how you look at it. The radioactive fallout from the fuel pools is catastrophic to everybody. There's nobody or no species with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. Due to a scorching heat wave, which is typical, and started down there, we still haven't got it here. Our summer doesn't start another couple of weeks. We're going to get a taste of it tomorrow, it appears. A number of nuclear, but then it's back in cool temperatures again. A number of nuclear power plants in Switzerland and France have been forced to either reduce activity or shut down completely as extreme temperatures prevent the sites from relying on water from the local rivers. 70% of the fresh water goes to the nuclear power plant in France. That's an absurd statement. The water pumped by nuclear sites is already very hot because of the heat wave and impacting the ability of nuclear plants to use it to cool down. So much less efficient. It's a terrible technology. On top of this, nuclear sites run the risk of posing a dangerous threat to local biodiversity by releasing water which is too hot into the rivers and seas. The Benzu nuclear power plant in Switzerland. They'd never show you pictures, so I have to go look up the pictures. Oh, look at the coincidence. They're surrounded by farms. And look at all the fresh water has to go past these disease factories to get to people. And that's the same water used for the farms. All nuclear power plants are releasing constantly into the environment, but also into the river, into the water. They legally have changed laws that allow them to release a certain amount of radiation legally every second. The river airs, which temperatures reach 25 degrees Celsius, leading Expo to curtail activity to prevent excessive warming of the already warm water, which could strain it. This will just wipe out the biodiversity. It won't strain it. It wipes it out. And Switzerland decided to freeze their nuclear power by 2033, but existing plants were able to continue to operate as long as they are safe. Well, there's no such thing as a safe nuclear plant. They're all hemorrhaging radiation from their fuel pools. France has a total of 57 active nuclear reactors and 18 power plants, according to the EDF. The country obtains around 65% of its electricity from nuclear. But that doesn't matter when you got no water to cool them, right? And geothermal is such a better solution. And they've been excluding it from everything, which the government, which is unfortunately the very last people you want to be trusting. They're supposed to be your employees, and instead they're your mortal enemies. Considers to be environmentally friendly. There's no other business out there where your employees are feared and scorned. Considered to be environmentally friendly, just because a group of people consider it, they can't quantify that assertion. Output has also been reduced at other sites, including the Blagus, which is France. Of course, that's going to be surrounded by farms. It's the norm. They hate your guts so much. You have no idea. In western France, as well as the Buggy nuclear power plant in southern France, of course, that's surrounded by farms too. I never got a very high quality picture. My apologies at the time. In southern France, we could also be shut down, drawing their cool water from the Grodid and the Rhone River. I'm going to butcher names in a foreign country because I don't speak those languages. Experts forecast that peaks in energy consumptions, peaks during heat waves, will only become more frequent as global temperatures continue to rise. Which is because of 80 years of emissions from nuclear disease factories. You have 1,000 fuel pools hemorrhaging radiation every day. And, each fuel pool could have 6-7 reactor cores into it. Typically at least 3 or 4 because all plants are really old now, right? And they don't have a repository. Are you horrified? 1,000 nuclear fuel pools circled by farms are poisoning millions of people daily? I hope you are. The nuclear is the most important subject. Right? I'm going to step away from conflicts and other stuff. I just want to cover nuclear news in particular. We're in real trouble. We're the last generations to have whales. Let that sink in. I'm just sick to my guts about it. Every day, all day long, I just can't believe all the whales are emaciated on the migratory route. It's just, I can believe it, but it's just, you just can't get used to the idea, right? We broke the food chain, the nuclear industry of 80 years of constant emissions. International Atomic Energy Agency. Nuclear energy education gets a boost from the International Atomic Energy Agency. How can they be a watchdog and a promoter at the same time? Now, who the hell are these people? It's just a corporation. They're not from my country or your country or anybody else's country. They're this weird concoction of hateful pro-nuclear community. An elixir of evil. Of course it gets a boost. Who gives Dana a boost? Who gives the anti-nuclear boost? My operation has fallen apart because there's hardly anybody is willing to help, right? Or able to help. I can't cover the bills. I just paid for registration of all equipment, and holy shit, I got nothing left to eat. And whatever I had left, I had to go and buy medication. We can't get out there and do any research. We don't have a motor for the boat anymore. And even if we did, we couldn't afford the gas. The industry has ostracized me perfectly. I don't think people realize that the amount of energy they put into attacking me all over the internet. I'm not a bad person. I have nothing but good intentions, and I work very hard to try to give this planet hope. The International Atomic Energy Agency will support countries in establishing nuclear educational programs at the national level as well as universities. How can you be a promoter and a watchdog at the same time? That's why we got rid of the the Atomic Energy Agency in Canada and the United States, because they were fulfilling both of those. And it's just simply a conflict beyond imagination, particularly of technology that's so lethal with just the emissions from the fuel pools. It's just a hateful industry. Education to support Kazakhstan's nuclear energy goals. International Atomic Energy Agency, of course, Japan's the third biggest donor. But they got 175 countries donating to them. Like huge money. So you have no problem being evil. Right? They have all the money they ever needed to be as evil as they wanted to be. And they're assimilated into the universities. Imagine if I was assimilated into the universities. My work, my research, my documentation was assimilated also. So-called yin and yang of the nuclear industry. The nuclear industry will disappear the minute that my kind of documentation is widespread. The International Atomic Energy Agency conducted these, and the people that work there are just unlikable and untrustworthy and with a criminal history. Its first INEAS university mission in April. And so their first mission was in Kazakhstan. So they got this new system now where they're going to... Education gets a boost. This is a new this new subsidy of the United Nations, right? That's what we're talking about. A new subsidy of United Nations called INEAS. Aims to complete its first nuclear reactor in the next 8 years. Its construction expected to avoid clean, but you need two gas, oil, and coal, or you need two gas, oil, or coal plants to run a nuclear power plant. Big ones, not small ones. Like each reactor needs 4,500 tons a minute of water. Think about 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks with 2,000 pounds in the back of them of water, 1,000 liters, going past your front door every 60 seconds, every minute. 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks of water each minute. How much energy do you need to pull that off? And reactor sites don't just have one reactor. So there's an enormous amount of energy just to move the water. To call it clean is absurd. It's the dirtiest technology by orders of magnitude. The country currently operates research reactors as well as several other nuclear installations. It's okay, they got lots of money to work with. They got all the money they ever wanted. They got all the prominence they ever wanted. They can infiltrate all the universities they already have, all the key positions in government. They have everything they ever wanted, but they're barely functional as it is. And then you got Greenpeace and Beyond Nuclear. All the big anti-nuclear groups are actually control opposition. It's unbelievable. They control everything. And then people like me, well, we're lucky. I'm very lucky. Tonight I got a lot. I got like 18 people on my show. Holy smokes. I'm getting kind of shy here. I'm not used to that many people. I've only been at it for a decade. I haven't been at it 80 years like the nuclear industry. The country currently operates research reactors as well as several other nuclear installations related to the front end of the nuclear fuel cycle. Well, they produce the uranium, high-grade uranium in Kazakhstan. Trusted dialogue. This is the next story. Stakeholder engagement for nuclear power program. This is a Canadian story. At Let's Talk Nuclear. I should have put that hashtag there tonight. I put 3 different ones there. And trust the dialogue. That's the very last people you want to be trusting. That's the mayor of this community, Kincardine Mayor Kenneth Craig. And he's pushing nuclear. It's absurd. The Municipality of Kincardine, which is Ontario, Canada, has helped represent Canada. Like, you're not representing Canada, you're representing a nuclear industry. Canada can't stand your guts. On the international stage at a landmark nuclear energy conference in Vienna, Austria. I really disrespect how they claim they're respecting Canada. Canadians would never agree with these disease factories. Mayor Kenneth Egghead Craig was invited by the International Degenerate Agency /UN to participate in a historic gathering of pro-nuclear degenerates and monsters from May the 26th to the 30th. And they always put like safe and clean. Every story you'll see it tonight. Every night, certainly. A socially responsible development of nuclear energy. Socially responsible. Like, what are you talking about? I don't know if I've ever heard it phrased that way before. Socially responsible. Does anybody remember that? I don't remember that. Kincardine experiences the host community for serial killer Bruce Power, the largest operating nuclear disease factory, the tritium. Like the Canadian CANDU reactors are tritium production machines, I guess, for the weapons industry. There's a lot of money per gram. Like, what is it, $38,000 a gram for tritium or something? You got to have tritium for nuclear weapons. Every 12 years you have to replace it. It enhances the weapon dramatically, right? and they can't contain the tritium. So legally, Canada, just one nuclear reactor, the one on the coastline in New Brunswick, Point Le Peur, releases 14,600,000 trillion atoms of tritium legally a year. This is absurd, unbelievably absurd numbers we're talking about. These are large nuclear accidents each year. They're releasing legally because they can't contain it, so they just change the rules to accommodate them. And because the population is caught up in fluff and nonsense and everything else, there's no resistance, right? Alongside the Ontario Power Generation Atomic Energy of Canada, there's a growing international community network which Canada is actively leading. Really? How is Canada leading? Where we are learning best practices while influencing national, international policies. Like, what are they talking about is actively leading? Canada's going to build the world's first small modular reactor. It's a 24-story building. It's 12 stories underground. Have you ever been in a 12-story underground building before? You know what I mean, right? This is absurd to call it small. It's 50 feet taller than Fukushima reactors, which were massive reactors. They address topics like emergency preparedness, which you don't have to do for gas, oil, or coal, or geothermal. You just got to do it for nuclear. And the emergency preparedness is to keep everybody on site so they don't have to pay out funds if there's a nuclear event. Make everybody stay in their homes. Don't run away. It's just a terrible industry full of terrible people. Ensuring nuclear developments are supported by the people most affected by them. So the people that are most likely to be poisoned are the ones that are tricked and manipulated and deceived the most, is what they're saying. To build a carbon-free, this is the most resource-intensive industry, bar nothing. They're going to spend $100 million every year on each nuclear power plant for just maintenance. Like it's the most resource-intensive industry conceivable. It's using 2 gas oil coal plants, dedicated, large ones, to power these massive sites. They can't run on their own power, right? And then everything on the site is triply inspected. The whole story is crazy. It's crazy. Kincardine is a founding member of the Canadian Association of Nuclear Host Communities. For more information on the International Atomic Energy Agency, they even put a link there to UN's little monster, pet monster, IAEA. Georgia's first year-round hydroponic strawberry producer uses geothermal energy. They produce so much raspberries they have to export them. They're using geothermal. But the industry wants you to use nuclear to do that. We can get a microreactor can do it. The industry is insane. We already lost our planet because of the nuclear industry. We lost the biodiversity. We lost the health of every human because of perpetual radioactive fallout. Is there a strawberry plantation in Georgia? The entire heating system runs on a geothermal energy from 3 wells originally drilled for oil at a depth of 1,900 meters. So they repurposed old oil wells. The water passes with a temperature between 83 and 94 degrees Fahrenheit, or Celsius rather, at a speed of 50 cubic meters an hour through Dutch-built heat exchangers for greenhouse heating. Scary looking, right? Oh, that's right. It's not nuclear, so it's not scary looking. They don't have to spend $100 million a year on maintenance. It's stupid. You got to get rid of this and put nuclear in there. Nuclear is the only thing that's any good. It's stupid to use geothermal. No need for supplemental gas or light. The nuclear are going to hate your guts. They found that putting the pots higher gave better humidity and fewer diseases. That's interesting, isn't it? It's simple, but it makes a big difference. And I'm even trying music for the plants. Let's see how the strawberries think of that. Right? They got a really good sense of humor. Something you'll never find in the nuclear industry. There's no humor in the nuclear industry. There's nobody likable in the nuclear industry. You can't tell me a single person in the nuclear industry that is actually a likable, relatable person. The cost is about, Jack, so there is room to grow, but honestly we need to export. Georgia alone can't eat all of the strawberries. I mean, that's an incredible story. It's just small little geothermal operation growing strawberries all year long. More than enough for the entire country of Georgia. Just on this one site. Nuclear can't do that. Google signs a deal to buy fusion energy from Bill Gates. I blew up laughing when I seen this one. It's so funny. Why are you looking at fusion when you have geothermal? You're going to spend all this money and all your hopes and dreams and rip off millions of investors and hope that at some point your fantasy comes true. When you have geothermal, good to go. What am I missing? They just refuse to be good stewards of our planet. They just refuse it under all circumstances. Google signs a deal for fusion. They hope to have the first arc nuclear plant online in the early 2030s. It's okay to hope. It's highly unlikely to come true. It's okay to hope, though. It's fusion. They've been trying to produce it forever. They're always 50 years away. Google has agreed to purchase power from a fusion plant in the 30s. Yeah, but it doesn't exist. Why are we talking about it? Why is it in the conversation? Needed for the boom in data center artificial intelligence, but why when there's so many other technologies that are much more applicable? Why does it have to be nuclear? I don't understand. And nobody can quantify that. Allows you 200 megawatts. Do you know how easy? Why would you want to wait that long when you can just build it with geothermal? If you took this kind of energy, this hype train, right, of Google and Amazon and Meta and everybody else, it's just a hype train, right? And they use these big corporations because they don't have anybody in the industry that's likable. They don't have anybody in the industry that people look at and can say, okay, well, that's pretty good sort, that's a pretty good person, they make a lot of sense, or they have a... Google's been an investor since 2021. And they did not provide the exact dollar figure, but said that it was in the multi-billions. You're going to spend multi-billions on a technology that's far from fruition, but you won't spend $1 billion, say, on geothermal to come up with a system that anybody can buy, any community can buy and implement and create a geothermal energy system locally. Because that's all it takes, right? We have the technology for drilling, right? There's lots of companies showing up now with geothermal techniques that will get you the last couple of miles to 1,000-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. But they can't raise any money. Now, if they call their company Geothermal Fusion, they'd probably raise $2 or $3 billion the next morning. But they don't. The fusion and the nuclear industry can't handle competition. They can't they can't exist with competition. It'd be like having a pool tournament where everybody is like, yeah, they can play the game, they know the rules of the game, but they're not very good. But because there's no professionals, they look great, right? That's what fusion is, and that's what small modular reactors are, and that's what micro reactors are. They're average pool players, and there's no experts around to show you what a real pool player looks like, right? And they won't allow geothermal into the nuclear dialogue. They'll talk about battery backup, which is absurd. Every time I hear it and you see the money wasted on it, you can chalk that up to the nuclear industry, right? Scuttling everything so the nuclear industry can look like they're pretty reasonable. Not that they will ever accomplish that. Marks the first direct deal between customer and a fusion energy company. It's not a direct deal. They're not exchanging. They're not providing power, and they're not using the power. So it's not a customer. And fusion energy company doesn't have a reactor, so they're not a real company. Like, they're carpetbaggers. In the old days, we call them carpetbaggers, and they would get tarred and feathered and put on a big log and rode out of town, right? In 2023, Microsoft signed a deal with Helion Energy for 50 megawatts of fusion. So what, though? Whoopie-doo. You signed a deal, a memorandum of understanding or whatever, for something that doesn't exist. Why is that in the news cycle all the time? Because they're trying to convince people to buy stocks, right? And so invoking Microsoft or Google or Amazon or Meta to be provided through Constellation Energy. But Constellation Energy doesn't have an application into the regulatory agency. They don't have a fusion reactor, let alone a 50 megawatt fusion reactor. The deal included a commitment to start producing by 2028. 3 years. Like, what are you talking about? You couldn't build a foundation in 3 years. You couldn't even get the site prepped and ready in 3 years. They're going to produce power in 3 years. Clearly, that's not true. CFS, Constellation Energy's Constellation Fusion Systems, raised a record $1.8 billion from investors, including Google, in 2021. You got $1.8 billion for something that doesn't exist and that you don't have an application to a regulatory agency. You don't have any proof of concept. You haven't acquired land. You haven't done this. You haven't done any of the. You don't have the technology. Must be nice. Geothermal would be lucky to get anything. Google, owned by Alphabet, which puts all their money in offshore accounts, don't pay any state, federal, local taxes, and then takes money that should have been spent or put into taxes and then gives it to these types of companies and gets a write-off, and then the taxpayers has to pay the write-off. They don't pay the taxes, they put it in offshore accounts, and they take the money and they give it away, and then they get a tax write-off, or the taxpayers has to pay more money, which is totally unconstitutional in America. It's piggybacking off the slavery law. It's called corporate personhood. It's an illegal amendment to the slavery laws. In 2023, Microsoft signed a power purchase agreement with OpenAI founder Sam Altman, fusion company Helion. They don't have a fusion reactor. They're not going to be taking any power by 2028 or 2029 or 2039. So far, no company has created commercial fusion energy. Yeah, that's nice of you to put that in there somewhere. I can guarantee it won't look like that if you do get it built. Right, they always give you these little tiny buildings where Oh, you won't even see it across the street. And then the small modular reactor in Canada is 240 feet tall. It's a skyscraper, a 24-story building. INEAS Energy secures 13.6 million accelerate global geothermal project. That's one of the biggest. There is another one now for $500 million, $500 million or something. But it's very rare to see anything getting thrown. Secures $13.6 million to accelerate global geothermal projects. Nuclear couldn't do anything with $13 million. Nuclear would laugh at you if you gave them $30 million. Like, what are we supposed to do with that? Google to commit funding for 3 advanced nuclear power projects. You turn into such a rotten company, eh? Elementl Power has not yet built any nuclear power projects. Yeah, it was nuclear. Like, and then called it low carbon. How can they call something that's the most resource intensive in history low carbon? They just do it in every story, right? It's not true. Anybody that's paying attention knows it's not true. Google Chief Executive Officer Sundar said last year the company could use small modular reactors. It could use geothermal too, couldn't it? Why does it have to be small modular reactors which don't exist? Why is it got to be fusion which doesn't exist? Can anybody answer that question? The company announced a partnership with Cars Power, a developer of small modular reactor technologies. But they're not. They don't have any technology. They don't have any small modular reactors. Did I mention geothermal actually exists? Anything a small modular reactor can do in the next 20, 30, 40 years, geothermal can do next year. The first Kuros project will come online by 2030. Yes, we hear that all the time, right? But you got to build a test reactor at one of the national laboratories. They're not even trying. They haven't acquired the people, the equipment. They're not picking up. They're not accumulating the material or the talent. In March, Amazon, a subsidy of the online real estate giant founded by Jeff Bezos, acquired U.S. power producer Talon Energy Cumulus data center campus at the Susquehanna Nuclear Power Station in Pennsylvania. 3 Mile Island. They don't have the technology. But why is it showing up constantly? Lithuania mulls returned to atomic energy 15 years after closing its only disease factory. Is weighing up a potential return to nuclear energy. Well, it's not the country's not. It's just a single person. Remember, they want you to think the whole country is. The government was essentially talking about small modular nuclear reactors, but why? Why would you talk about something that doesn't exist? You have lots of everywhere. You can do geothermal anywhere. Now we have the technology. A class of recently developed, geothermal, small modular reactors are not developed. They can't quantify that assertion. Designed to be built on a production line. Like, what are you talking about? That technology doesn't exist. They can't win a debate. They can't win a open debate. It would be the death of the nuclear industry to try an open debate with somebody that knows the difference, right? Many countries across the world are investing in small modular technologies, but so far only the operational examples are in China and Russia. They're not small. Like the Russians' academic is a massive 15-story barge. There's nothing small about the one in China. This is a massive 300 megawatt reactor. This is a massive reactor. These are not made in factories. These are not small. These are not. They don't have any of the attributes of a small modular reactor whatsoever. They're large reactors. It is necessary to consider new, clean, right? Why would you call it clean? It doesn't even exist. And you're going to be using plutonium mixed oxide fuel. And controllable. Why would you use that narrative for? Nuclear is not controllable. It runs at one speed. Proposals for a new plant located were put forward and reached an advanced stage. The government formally notified the European Commission of the plans in 2011. The idea eventually fell by the wayside in light of a non-binding referendum in which the citizens rejected the plan. So when they had a referendum, the country turned against them right away. You'll see that symmetrically worldwide, by the way. More countries are looking at the potential for nuclear. But they're like, why? What are you talking about? Nuclear's been around for 80 years. You really think the country's never heard of it before? You really think they never looked at it before? But it's really interesting to disengage from Russia. Following Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, which caused inflation worldwide, is highly suspect. The U.S. had all kinds of bioweapons labs in Ukraine. NATO had moved into Ukraine, right, and surrounding countries. And that was right on the border. And Russia said that if you set up shop in Ukraine, we're going to go to war against Ukraine. And so they set up shop in Ukraine, and then Russia kept their word and went to war. Polish Prime Minister is proposing using small modular reactors in the future. So today there was all of these stories. I wasn't going to do a show tonight. I'm still not feeling that good. But I get pretty bored, right? You can only sleep so much. You got to do something. Haven't seen a bumblebee or a wasp this year whatsoever. I got one spider outside my kitchen window, and it's got this incredibly deformed web, and there's nothing in it. Propose using small modular reactors in the future. Not propose using geothermal or wind and solar, and maybe small modular reactors, or small modular reactors, and then extra for peak energy we're going to use just storage or something like that. It's just small modular reactors. All the stories are written. All these stories are pointless. All these journalists are making a fortune. Way more than I'm making. I should go back to the days when we just blogged about the news. Those people are making $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a day. Right now, they're just covering fluff news all day. People love it, eh? Cover crime and fluff. I cover real topics, and I'm like hated. Everybody hates me. It's only this little group of people right here that we're doing our best to help the world, to make the world a better place. Compared to everybody else worldwide, I don't see anybody standing out. Which is hard. Just got it. All the whales are emaciated. It's just absurd. The Polish Prime Minister is going to be using small modular reactors. Lithuania is going to be using small modular reactors. They're going to be everywhere. Everybody's going to have one, a spare one, out in their shed. In case your neighbors break down, they can borrow your small modular reactor. It's going to be great. Indonesia cut the ribbons on a 110 megawatt geothermal power plant. Boo! How come you're not getting small modular reactors, you little short bastards? Get with the program. Nobody likes geothermal. It's clean, it's green, it's too cheap to meter. We want dirty nuclear. Bring it on, baby. It poisons babies, by the way. When you close down a nuclear plant, the first thing you see is infant mortality drops. Good. International Atomic Energy Agency, which is not international. They're a corporation, part of the United Nations, the Military-Industrial Complex, United Nations. Pledges support for the nuclear energy development in Africa. They're going to get you, man. Poor Africa. They never done nothing. They shouldn't be forced to take nuclear. Low emissions. The hard cases, eh? Raphael Grossi said there is nothing preventing Africa from claiming its place in the evolving global energy nuclear landscape. Oh, they got the word clean there. Nothing clean about nuclear is it cleans out all the species. Raphael Grossi stated, highlighting the growing momentum beyond nuclear power as a crucial component of the world's energy mix. He noted last year at Conference of Parties 28, Climate Summit marked a turning point with widespread recognition of nuclear energy as an indispensable part of the solution to climate change, which is caused by 80 years of emissions. Oh my. 80 years of radioactive fallout. No, it's clean energy, Dana. It's totally clean, Dana. You don't understand. It's so clean that the Virgin Mary herself is going to resurrect and bless it. That's plutonium dispersal after 20 days post-Fukushima. This was a study from the IRS and the French government experts on nuclear and radiation risk. Radiation levels spiked. This is not a projection. They spiked 1 million times normal to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137, which pulses energy 600 feet every second. So you got a technology, when it's released into the environment, it pulses energy 600 feet every second. That same study there is based on 8 days. This is the same study, the French government's model, based on 23 days. At 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. So the entire planet, all the fresh water, all the trees, all the bushes, all the insects, all the birds, all the humans, have no way of escaping that. There's no way you can't eat it or drink it or not breathe it in. There's zero possibility for any species. And you're talking about full body x-rays in the forests and the meadows. So man-made radiation at the projected radioactive fallout is the only emitter that can produce a plume like that. We don't do that. Gas, oil, coal emissions are very big. Carbon is very heavy. It doesn't travel very far unless it's windy. So it might travel 100 miles on a very, very windy day. But generally, it's going to fall before that onto the ground. And so wherever it lands, you got more trees, more birds, more insects, more puppies, more plants. It's good for you. Carbon's good for you, right? You can't have we look like the moon without carbon. But radiation attacks everything that's carbon-based. And so, even if gas, oil, and coal emissions did produce a plume like this, it doesn't pulse energy at the speed of light every second for millions of years. So carbon doesn't pulse energy. It doesn't have energy. It's just inert. it gets assimilated into plants and trees, and we have bigger plants and bigger trees. But with man-made radiation, you destroy the root system, the bacteria, the fungus. You kill everything. It attacks everything with replicating cells. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light, and in cesium's, it's 600 feet pulse of energy every second. So that's cesium-137, covering the whole planet in 23 days. That's plutonium. Plutonium. Covering the planet in 20 days. So if you get carbon in your body, it's irrelevant because your body needs carbon, right? I'm sorry I'm not on my game tonight. But plutonium let me explain to plutonium what it does when it's in your body. Just heartbroken. We're losing all the whales. They're all emaciated. It's just mind-blowing. We're going to cover it tomorrow night if I make it tomorrow night. Toxicity of inhaled plutonium dioxide in beagle dogs. This is a study by the U.S. Navy's Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico. And Dr. Raymond Gilmedy was the lead author, and typically 95 studies, I think it was, we got him doing beagle dogs. So it was 144 beagle dogs, and all 144 died within 5 years. Death from radiation occurred 1.5 to 5.4 years after the exposures. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver. So 3 tumors. Typically, if the dog lives long enough, they'll end up with 3 tumors. Lung, skeleton, and liver. Skeleton tumors, nasty. Skeleton tumors found in 93 dogs were the most common cause of death. That's a terrible way for anybody, let alone animals, to die. Lung tumors found in 46 dogs were the second most common cause of death. You hear and tell of a lot of lung tumors, a lot of bone tumors in your community. Guess what? And tumors in these 3 organs often occurred in the same animal were competing causes of death. These findings in dogs suggested a similar dose-related biological effect could be expected in humans exposed to plutonium. But it was discovered that the human kidney were 50 times less efficient than the animal kidney at removing the plutonium. So you're 50 times more likely to die than the dogs, and all the dogs died. You're 50 times more likely to die. And it gets worse. The curium isotopes are the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod. So forget the alpha emitting for a second. It doesn't matter if it's alphas or neutrons or betas or gammas. Curium is the biggest byproduct, not cesium. I showed you the models of the cesium and the plutonium, right? But there's another facet of this story. Curium needs lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium. So plutonium killed all the dogs, but the biggest byproduct is not the plutonium, it's the curium isotopes. And curium isotopes, the neptunium, that decays after 2.5 days to plutonium. Well, there's 10 decays, 10 different decays. Every 2.5 days, 50% of whatever is in there will decay to plutonium, which is a 24,000 year half-life, is 240,000 year lifespan. And don't forget, plutonium is nobody's friend. Grossi emphasized that achieving a low-carbon global economy will be impossible without poisoning every species on the planet. We've got to poison every species on the planet. Just the cesium from the French government of 1 million to 10 million times per cubic meter of air pre-Fukushima, which could be 30, 40, 50 million atoms per cubic meter of air of cesium-137, with pulses energy 600 feet every second for 300 years. But the biggest byproduct is the curium isotopes. But you got all the other, you got the plutonium, you got the neptunium, you got all the other isotopes acknowledged. You noted a rising interest across African nations in small modular reactors and microreactors. Yeah, because they don't understand the nuances, the details, the minutiae. Grossi urged investments in infrastructure and local capacity building, saying the International Atomic Energy Agency stands ready to work hand in hand with Africa, who can't even contain their sewage or their garbage, on its journey towards a safe and sustainable, safe, you got to use the word safe, right? You don't use that with gas, oil, and coal, you only use it with nuclear. And it's not a sustainable future. It's the opposite, it's the death of your future. It's your enemy, it's the enemy of humanity. Nucleo and Marie formed JV to develop non-nuclear infrastructure for next-generation reactors. Nucleo, it's quite the scammer artist, those guys. European nuclear technology company Nucleo, Italian engineering group Marie have formed a new joint venture, Nexcleo, to develop and deliver the non-nuclear infrastructure for next-generation modular nuclear reactors. Well, they can't predict something that doesn't exist, right? You got to have an application, a reactor design into the regulatory agency in order to develop the infrastructure to accommodate that. Does that make sense? Is that... I got 13 likes after an hour. Now I know the world hates my guts. Are you horrified 1,000 nuclear fuel pools circled by farms are poisoning millions of people daily? You should be terrified by it. I should have more thumbs up than I have votes on my poll, right? That's typical normal. It's another day covering the hateful nuclear industry. That's talking about Google probably doesn't help. French uranium miner Orano, which replaced, and I can't remember the name of it, what the name of the company was. They went bankrupt. They went on purpose, right? The French government company. I never thought I'd forget that name. Bloop, 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 bloop. There you go. Anyway, it's the same people. They get the same phone number, the same address, the same fleet of cars, helicopters, and private jets. Has warned its majority-owned joint venture in Niger is nearing bankruptcy. Well, they went in Niger in the 70s, or they went in the late 60s and built the infrastructure, and they've been stealing uranium, high-grade uranium out of Niger. And they caused a civil war since the 70s, or 60s, so they can get their hands on high-grade uranium. That's how they power their reactors. They've come up with new markets now, but generally for the majority of its existence, the reactors were powered by the high-grade uranium ore from Niger that they got for nothing by causing a civil war, destroying millions of people's lives in the country, arming opposing rebels caused by the civil war that they created in the 60s. French uranium miner Orano highlights Samair's financial distress due to Niger's export restriction post-military coup. So they had a military coup after 50 years. Right, they left themselves vulnerable. They didn't care anyway. So now they had a military coup, and the country says we want to get our piece of the pie, and after 50 years we're taking it by force. Now nationalized by the Niger amidst Western regional tensions. So there was a civil uprising finally, nearing bankruptcy following nearly a year of export restrictions imposed by the country's military government. Niger is responsible for approximately 4% of the global uranium output. It's a key supplier for Orano. It used to be Areva. That's the name I was looking for. And Areva, when they went bankrupt, changed their name to Orano. And what they done was they got rid of their responsibilities for decades of reactor fuel, used fuel. It was just a big, massive scam, right? What they done. A significant player in the nuclear energy sector, yeah, because Orano was Areva. Areva still exists, though, in Africa and in Canada. Faces with this irresponsible, illegal, and unfair behavior by Areva/Orano, a company owned by the French government, a state openly hostile towards Niger since 2023, since 1971. Niger has decided in full sovereignty to nationalize the site. Yeah, because there's not much left. The government probably set this up to happen anyway, right? So they can blame it on a military junta rather than blaming it on the corruption that actually driven it. The military junta, which took power in 2023, defended the decision to nationalize the mine by accusing Orano/Areva of extracting 86% of the uranium output since 1971. Well, they're not accusing it, it's a fact. 3 Mile Island, nuclear name change. They changed the name, 3 Mile Island. Get a load of that, eh? And social media strategies show power of AI energy push. They changed the name of 3 Mile Island. That's hilarious. Big tech wants more electricity. Well, get some. You don't need nuclear. But grassroots activists are skeptical. Grassroots activists. With the new social media account, the name changed and appearance from a former Miss America. She's a horrible creature, right? She's a disgusting, lying creature. She's a former Miss America, which means nothing on typically on the grander scale of thing. It means literally nothing. Constellation Energy recently held a rally to bolster support for a nuclear renaissance near the site of one of the biggest atomic accidents in U.S. history. Santa Susana is equal to 460 3 Mile Islands melting down at the one time in radioactive fallout. What they done at Idaho National Laboratories, at Savannah Riverside, at Hanford, at any of these, makes 3 Mile Island look irrelevant. But 3 Mile Island was brutal. When people came back, their pets were blind or dead, for instance. A few years later, then they started making cancer cluster models. Infant mortality went skyrocketing. When I say nuclear, you say energy, Grace Genke says. The 2023 Miss American winner. She only won because the nuclear industry has an influence. She was by no means the prettiest or smartest girl there. By no means, not even close. Turned nuclear energy engineering and an advocate, really. A pro-nuclear, somebody who's a nuclear engineer is not an advocate of nuclear? Is that what they're trying to say? So she's one of the rare ones who's an advocate of nuclear. Most nuclear engineers are not advocates of nuclear, is what they're saying. Shouted to the crowd at the site, when I say nuclear, you say energy. Most of the people were Constellation's employees. On top of that, I was watching the video and it was so sad, pathetic. I felt bad for her. I felt I missed a skink. She should be in jail with Brian Kohlberg. Constellation, and there was 400 people there. Most of them were the employees. And we've covered her, folks, a lot of times. She tells absurd amount of lies. She's going places in the nuclear industry. We'll make sure she's very wealthy. She was really tiny back last year, or 2023. Now she's packing on the pounds there. Thyroid issues, I guess, from the nuclear industry. The rally with 400 attendants, many of them Constellation employees. Well, who else would he be? I say 95% of them are Constellation employees. Who else is going to be there for something stupid like that? Initially named 3 Mile Island, which is shut down, now goes by the name of Crane Clean Energy Center. Crane, and you got to put the word clean there, look at that. That's absurd to even suggest a nuclear is clean. It should be illegal. It's certainly disgusting. This is one of the craziest pictures I've ever seen. You have a nuclear meltdown, everybody gathers up at the nuclear meltdown. It's absurd. So folks, if you're ever unfortunate enough to have a nuclear meltdown, don't go near this site. That's the opposite of smart. M-A-R-T, smart. It's the opposite, right? We got no bees. We got no wasp. Holy shit, we're at some 46 million migratory birds are missing. Let me say that again. We're the biggest migratory route on the entire planet for seabirds, and they come here, lay their eggs, and raise their fledglings, and then instead of 46 million, you got 125, 150 million birds flying out of here, right? It's quite the spectacle. There's nothing here. The cliffs are empty. There's not even any stains from their excrements on the cliffs anymore. They would be there all year long, right? But after a few years of them not coming back because they died from starvation, that's why same reasons as all the whales are emaciated. Starvation. The food chain is broken now. What do you make of this? You got a nuclear meltdown. Everybody runs down to the nuclear meltdown with their cameras. Man. They didn't know back then. That's the evidence. They had no concept. That'll never happen again, right? People will never go back. Now, last show I had 14 thumbs up when the show was over. What a terrible industry, eh? That is in a position to do something like that. My shows, I like to think anyway, I hope to think that they're informative. That it's a realistic show, right? It's not I put a lot of energy and time and effort into putting a good set together. If I stop the show right now, I got a total of 33 views. So it'll show up on your end at about 25 views after an hour and 20 minutes. They're so good at it now, they basically got me erased. I don't even exist anymore. All done with just a stroke of a key, right? Little program, and Dana doesn't exist anymore. They must feel so big and strong. Must feel so powerful, they doing that. Must be some thrill for them. All of them will regret the fact they done it to me at some point. They all know I'm not a bad person. Innovative company announces quest to drill into limitless energy sources buried on the United States volcanoes. Wait, what? You're going to dig under volcanoes? Could change the way we power our homes, cities, and the entire country? Well, it makes sense, I guess. Temperatures exceeding 600 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hotter than gas, oil, and coal. Geothermal. Geothermal is no longer confined to rare natural hotspots. CEO of Microseismic Corporation with microthermal energy. That's crazy. Next generation geothermal, also called enhanced geothermal. Round the clock clean. Now that's actual clean. That's actual clean energy. DARPA says decreasing launch cost. A new analyst led it to cancel the Draco nuclear propulsion system. We knew that was going to get cancelled. It was only about promoting the nuclear industry. That's all these stories ever are. The effort was overtaken by advances in more conventional systems. Nuclear, the world's stupid energy. At least 8 deaths as Europe heatwave caused forest fires, health alerts, and shuts a nuclear reactor. The heat wave is caused by 80 years of emissions from the nuclear industry. Young people jump into a canal Saint Martin in Paris, France today. It left 8 people dead as the summer temperatures hit another record high. Forced closures of nuclear reactors at a Swiss power plant. Health alerts, forest fires. Italy, France, and Germany have been warned of the risk of heavy storms. There's a forest fire in Spain. It's crazy, eh? Wow, everything is tender dry because of the nuclear industry. It killed the bacteria, the fungus, and all the fields and forests. So now when you get a lightning strike, everything lights up. France Energy Minister reported 2 deaths linked to the heat, with 300 others taken to the hospital. Poor France, like there's so much corruption for so long. The country doesn't really exist anymore. And now they've been invaded on purpose. And so the country is just completely destroyed. In Germany, temperatures were forecast to peak at 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degrees. So imagine what it's like where there's no wind and stuff like that. Imagine what the humidity is going to be like in that area. 2 men over 60 died in separate incidences on a beach. How do you die on a beach? How do you not get up and go into the water and cool down? That's crazy. Heart goes out to their families. Italy, France, and Germany have been warned of the risk of the heavy storms due to excessive warming and unstable atmosphere. Yeah, that's what nuclear does. Dirty, dirty nuclear. The KKW Benzu of Swiss Energy Company. When you look it up, what do you see in the background? Oh, that's right, farms. Right, they'll show you that picture, but when you actually look up the site, you'll see all these farms. Our new climate reality means we can no longer be surprised when temperatures. Well, all of this is post-Fukushima, right? These abnormalities, these massive perpetual heat waves, these emaciated mass species die-offs are all post-Fukushima. Quite a coincidence. 39 degrees Celsius in France. This was a great story. So, Utah's Oregon exposed to nuclear radiation could be compensated under the mega bill. The very last bill, the very last part of the big beautiful bill, the mega bill, was about bringing back the Radiation Compensation Act. Giving payments to people who are sickened by the nuclear weapons testing could be reauthorized and expanded. It closed down last year, right? Could be, maybe, perhaps. This is, look, they're doing nuclear testing right alongside of each other. It's absurd, isn't it? These are serious nuclear wastelands. They went back in to do more nuclear. The radioactive fallout doesn't have to be in anger. It's any radioactive fallout, right? It's all the same. It doesn't matter if it was done angrily, with bad intentions or good intentions. It's still the radioactive fallout. These are all bomb craters. So they gather up water. The water evaporates with all the radiation that goes right around the planet and poisons everything. Craters across the Frenchman Flats in Nevada, where the U.S. government tested hundreds of nuclear weapons. What was it, 900 or something? The federal government program that gives payments to people sickened by the nuclear weapons testing is the RECA Act. The big beautiful bill, among its many provisions, is an expansion of the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, or RECA, that expired a little over a year ago. It was in the final pages of the Senate's 887-page bill. If it clears the final vote we needed from the House, downwinders in all of Utah will receive compensation for their medical bills, marking a significant change to the progress the advocates say was too narrow to begin with. Found in the final pages of the Senate 887-page bill. Downwinders in all of Utah, New Mexico, Idaho would now be eligible for payments. Coverage would also be wide in Arizona to include all of Kincardine. My apologies for butchering these names. Yavapai, Navajo, Apache, Gila, Mohave counties. Residents who live in certain parts of Missouri, Texas, Alaska, Kentucky, who were sickened due to the Manhattan Project would also receive compensation. And the new program expiry date would be the end of 2028. In some cases, people who lived in affected areas for just 1 year would be eligible for compensation. The program previously required to live there for at least 2 years. And then at Hanford, if you worked there for a single 8-hour shift 70 years ago and you're sick now, you don't have to prove you got sick because you worked there. You just have to prove you worked there for 8 hours. It should be the same here. The longer you're there, the sicker you're going to get. The compensation amount, originally $50,000 to $75,000, would be increased to $100,000 in most cases. And uranium miners and workers in Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, Wyoming, South Dakota, Washington, Utah, Idaho, North Dakota, Oregon, and Texas would be covered. That's pretty impressive. And many individuals are likely living downwind of the nuclear weapons testing. Well, nuclear fallout is not, it doesn't just go downwind. When it comes, let me put this another way. When we talk about nuclear fallout, I'll show you, actually make it easier. Hang on here. the word downwinders, after all of these years of covering this, 23 years, I still can't comprehend why the word downwind is used. Let me explain that a bit better for you with documentation, because nothing says, well, so here's the radioactive fallout from Japan, based on France's numbers of 1 million to 10 million tons per cubic meter of air of pre-Fukushima levels of cesium-137. So which part of this is downwind? So when you're looking at this, does the word downwind come to your mind? Do you like, oh, I live over here, that's downwind, I think. Now you say, I live on planet Earth, so I'm downwind. So how can they use the word downwinder when it has this particular attribute? Just food for thought. Many individuals were likely living downwind. Well, downwind is the entire planet after 30 days. That's a 30-day model. So why would we use the words downwinder? Does the wind only blow one way? Right? I'm not trying to be weird, but I'm just saying. Not clear yet whether the RECA has the support needed in the House to withstand a final vote. The New York Times estimated that the current proposed expansion will cost about $7.7 billion, which is nothing, right? If they send that to Ukraine every week, don't they? Radiant, selected by the Department of Energy, is the first new nuclear reactor designed to be tested in the dome. The dome. I guess that's the dome right there. Reactor installation testing scheduled to begin in the spring of 2026. I'm confused. Does Radium actually have an application into the regulatory agency for a license? And it's being established at the Idaho National Laboratory to accelerate the deployment of advanced micro-reactor technologies. They don't have an application into the regulatory agencies. How are they going to build something? Right? They don't have a design into the regulatory agency. To accelerate deployment of advanced, again, here's the micro and the small modular reactors over and over and over all day long. Radiant and the Department of Energy are now a team with a combined mission. Just 9 months from now, we will have the opportunity in 9 months to put the 53rd reactor at Idaho National Laboratory's long history into the dome. So Idaho National Laboratory had 53 reactors? Wow. That is really something. That is insane. But I don't know what they're talking about because there's no evidence that, because we cover all of this all the time, there's no evidence that they have a reactor. I don't know. I don't know, really. I don't know. I do know they don't have a application or a design, and we would have talked about it. I would know about it, right? 53 reactors at Idaho National Laboratory. How many of them melted down again? There's a couple of them at least melted down. Radiant's reactors designed to be built on an assembly line and deliver more than 1 megawatt electricity in a portable package. Oh yeah, no, I know all about this company. They don't have assembly lines. They don't have factories. They don't have a supply chain. Right? They don't have any of this. They're just trying to increase their stocks, I guess. Fueled by Triso fuel particles. which is a very dubious fuel, by the way, is designed for deployment anywhere it's needed without the need for it to refuel for years. Yeah, well, there's lots of these designs that claim that. We've never seen something come to fruition, though. High SA low enriched uranium HALEU plutonium mixed oxide fuel. That's how they're going to pull it off, right? Everything's going to be plutonium. Over 85% of the global economy backs new nuclear. And this was the Nuclear Energy Institute. They wouldn't lie to you, would they? They wouldn't lie to you just to promote nuclear, would they? Get a load of this. This is what they call carbon free. Would you like to see the light and power bill for that place for each day? They're running out. They have 2 dedicated gas, oil, and coal plants. To build it takes them 16, 17 years to build it for its entire lifespan, and then for 100 years to decommission it. Like when you zoom in on this, you start to appreciate the enormity of that site. It's hard to comprehend how big that site actually is. But when you individual pieces of equipment, see, when you look at that equipment, it's pretty big, right? But when you look at the site, it's hard to comprehend. The industry is crazy. How much energy does it take to run this site each day? It's an absurd amount, right? Helping Britain achieve net zero. That's hilarious. How can you call this, which is a paper written by Miles Allen, by the way, net zero, it's sucked up by UN and weaponized against humanity. How can you call this net zero or carbon free or anything else? How does that work? How do you justify that in your heads out there, the people that does, right, regurgitate those narratives? How can you call this anything but the most resource intensive industry in the world? Like, everything that goes on the site is triply inspected to make sure it's perfect material. All the cement, every nail, every screw, everything is triply by 3 different companies to make sure it's the best of the best metal, the best of the best cement, the best of the best wiring, the best of the best plumbing, the best of the best insulation, the best of the best piping, the best of the best of everything. Everybody getting paid top wages, every piece of equipment. No, it's net zero, do you know? That's net zero. That's what net zero looks like. It's big and sucking the energy from 2 coal plants to run this site each day, and to run the site after. There's even more energy. It's net zero, do you know? Helping Britain achieve net zero. It's the strangest. And this rusty lid is the strangest, most insane assertion conceivable. How did he look anybody in the face and say it? Well, they put it up on a big sign so everybody takes a picture, ends up with a picture of it, and they say it for him, right? But it's simply not true. This is the furthest thing from clean. New research by the UK Nuclear Industry Association, NIA, and the World Nuclear Association, the degenerates of degenerates, show that an overwhelming majority, 87% of the world's economy, we just seen in Lithuania, right, when they had a referendum, the whole country said no. Same thing with Taiwan, when they had a referendum, the whole country said no. But the world's economy is backing nuclear, so that the pro-nuclear community in the government is backing nuclear. Big surprise. Compared to 5.5% phasing out nuclear. Why would we want to believe in the Nuclear Energy Institute anyway? And why would you put the word clean? How does the word clean fit into this equation right here, huh? How do you look at that and say, oh, it's clean technology, Dana? You fearmonger. Oh. I'm old and busted up, man. I'm doing the best I can for everybody, but I don't know. Smaller nuclear reactors spark renewed interest in a once shunned energy source. By Dickhead Montgomery Stayline. That's 3 Mile Island. That's the Susquehanna River, right? Constellation Energy. They're going to change the name. They changed the name of it. What was it? I can't even remember now. Something Clean Energy. Crane Clean Energy. That's right. Owner of the shuttered 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant. You know, the nuclear meltdown? Let's not call it a meltdown. Bolstered by $3.2 million from a former middleman oilman. Oh yeah, I remember this story. This western Texas city of 130,000 people is helping the Lone Star State lead a national nuclear energy resurgence. So Buddy donated $3.2 million, which is literally, you can't do anything in the nuclear industry, only buy off a couple of politicians with $3.2 million. And now they have a renaissance. Well, but where is it? Small modular reactors are designed to be built in factories and then moved to the site. I didn't know that. I never heard that before. That's amazing. I should quit right now. And they got it all figured out. Only problem is there is no small modular reactors. There's no factories building it. And it's highly unlikely there's going to be. This is the dying wolf call of the nuclear industry. Only 2 small modular reactors are in operation, one in China. They keep using that narrative. These are not small reactors. These are massive reactors. And another in Russia. There's the one in Russia is not in Russia. It's it's in Russia. It's on the ocean. It's a barge. It was a derelict barge that they built. They built a reactor from parts and pieces left over from other reactors. It was supposed to be proof of concept. There was no test runs or nothing like that. They didn't build it. But it's a 15-story above the water. We don't know how many stories below, but it's 15 stories above it. Probably 5 stories below. So it's probably a 20-story building. And, oh no, it's a small modular reactor, Dana. Desperate, eh? Because you keep seeing the same exact narrative used to quantify their assertions when it's simply not true. Nuclear is happening, said Robinson, who retired from the oil business and moved to Abilene to launch the company. It has to happen. Because you spent all this money, it has to happen, isn't it? So I've been tracking legislation for 18 years. And when I first started tracking, there were maybe 5 or 10 bills that said the word nuclear. Said Christine, the trader, who directed state government affairs at the Institute. Directed state government affairs at the Institute. They're always connected, aren't they? This legislative session, we're tracking over 300 bills all across the country. That's because of the false nuclear renaissance that Trump promised, right? He signed the bills, but it doesn't mean anything. Look, we already showed you can give the industry all the precious resources, all the money, all the accolades, all the equipment it could ever dream of, still can't produce something. When it comes to nuclear, the 90% of the money is stolen through administration. The push is bipartisan. In New York, Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul last month directed New York Power authorities to build a zero-emission advanced nuclear disease factory somewhere upstate. A zero-emission, net zero, clean. Like, it's a mental illness to write stuff like that. Right? When you see stuff like that, you know it's highly unlikely to come to fruition. It doesn't have a backbone to it. They're not realistic, and it's just posturing. right? It doesn't have. It doesn't. It doesn't speak of anything tangible. Redefining nuclear energy, which doesn't emit a significant amount of planet-warming greenhouse gases. Doesn't. That's all it emits is planet. The fuel pools. Which is why we get that poll tonight. Each fuel pool creates a plume that covers the whole planet within 30 days. If you just start the fuel pool up, this is what it's going to do. And by the time it stops here, it'll be 30 days. And there's 1,000 fuel pools worldwide doing this. Every nuclear accident does this. All the nuclear testing does this. It's the only element on the planet that creates plumes that covers the entire planet. And there's nothing on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against the proximity or the intake of this stuff. It's in your body, it's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second, wrecking chromosomes and DNA and cells. Your body tries to repair everything each second, it can't keep up with that. And it has to attack the source every second. It does this with white blood cells. Eventually, it'll build a tumor around it. And the cancer epidemic started in the 70s because that's what we looked like in the 70s with all the nuclear testing, which doesn't emit a significant amount of planet-warming greenhouse gases. You got a plume that covers the entire planet for millions of years, and it pulses energy at the speed of light every second. You really think for 1 second that carbon is worse than this, or even equal to it, or even a problem. Carbon produces insects and birds and plants and trees. This stuff kills it. Plants and trees and insects and birds and whales. Which doesn't emit a significant amount of planet warming. Well, that's all it emits is planet warming greenhouse gases. This is your greenhouse gas. It's called radioactive fallout. We never stop producing it and it never goes away. What part about that is confusing for people? What part about that is it that people can't wrap their minds around? You can't call nuclear clean. It's the dirtiest. You can't call it carbon free. You can't call it clean. Last October, Google signed an agreement. So what? Who cares? Whoopee-doo. Wow, wow, wow. Yay. Big surprise. Something that's enormously evil buys into something enormously evil. I'm just like starstruck. And 500 megawatts by 2035. Just because they signed a memorandum of understanding, it doesn't mean it's come to fruition. We already seen that 10 years ago, the memorandum of understandings. None of them have come to fruition. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, super evil, announced in December it is looking to reach a similar deal. Yeah, and if you don't sign the holy allegiance of the evil nuclear industry, then, I mean, like, just because they're corrupt, that doesn't make it good. Constellation Energy announced September would reopen 3 Mile Island. Why would you do that, though? With all the harm and heartbreaks that thing has done to humanity. Why would you do that again? Microsoft power tech giant AI data center. Can't you power with something else? Why does it have to be something that doesn't exist? Why does the data centers have to be fusion? Why does the data center have to be small modular reactors? Why does the data center got to be micro reactors? Why does it have to be nuclear? Is that incredibly suspicious? And none of them have to follow through, right? They just use their name for the people that are malleable or pliable, who don't understand the bigger picture like you do already. Folks shouldn't sleep on nuclear. The only reason they're saying that is because everybody's sleeping on nuclear. Pennsylvania Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro said the important role of clean. But it's not clean. It has nothing to do with clean. You're like saying skanky there is clean, right? It's absurd to suggest it. It's simply not clean. must say, the censorship on me is flattering. I appreciate it. But I'm not a bad person. I have 40 people came by my show tonight, which means I'll end up with 25 views when I end the show here. Really. For being a good person, for being an honest person, for trying to do the moral and ethical thing for the species which nuclear couldn't care less about. It seems the intent on exterminating. Why is this industry so evil? Why is it so sinister all the time? Well, I feel a bit better. At least I got a show in for a change. I don't know. Oh, I can see. I can see, said the blind man who was talking to the deaf man. I can see. James had put out a really important song. They're all important. Where he was focused in on church rock. Remember church rock? Most people probably never heard tell of church rock. Church rock is where a tailing pond was set up to fail in the Navajo nations and destroyed their aquifers and their fresh water. And they were denied, and still are today, they were denied the ability to not be poisoned. I mean, they had this 90-something million gallons of tailing from the uranium mine. One of the uranium mines. I think they had at one point, they had a lot of little small uranium mines, but they all had chemical ponds. There was like 15,000 of them abandoned in the Navajo counties, the native community. And Church Rock Promenade is a song James put together so that it brings hopefully some attention to that ongoing, it's still an ongoing tragedy. The people are still, the families, and you can watch, there's documentaries out there from the native community. What they done to the natives was just, and their ancestral drinking water, their land, their communities. And the people were so uneducated, they stayed there. And the industry didn't warn them, didn't try to help them. It done everything to make it worse. We're going to play that for you. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. Probably going to cover species die-off video tomorrow night, if I do a show tomorrow night. Have a great night. Take care.
To hold decay, no liner laid beneath the fill, just unreinforced terrain and will. At 5 a.m. the wall gave way, a geyser formed, no time delay. Red water pond received the flood with livestock down and tainted mud. Inspections filed, the cracks ignored, reports delayed, no funds
Island, March 79. Church Rock spill, July the same. Cleanup, 1% retrieved. Dam reused, mill reopened.
Animals fell, their organs stained.